right, welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays. My very special guest, one of my favorite people on the interwebs. She is a member of the Nation's Corner, and she is repping the Nation's Corner today. She is the El Debonair, or La Debonair, Debhausen on Twitter. Hello, Debhausen.
Hello.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be on.
I'm real excited. This is you're one of my favorite people, and one of the many reasons you're one of my favorite people is how positive and how you deal with the internet. Apparently, you tend to be very brush it off, and I mean, I know it probably we're going to talk about how that's a lot harder to do than it seems.
Yeah.
But I've also enjoyed you on the Nation's Corner and a lot of that, and so I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely have learned how to kind of not get involved in online drama BS. I feel like sometimes if people seem like they're haters or they're just hating on something for no reason, I'm like, well, if you have the time and the energy to be that negative about something, then I'm sorry. That's a you problem.
Yeah, that's a you problem, not a me problem.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah,
there seems to be in every fandom. I mean, I've been trying really hard to not make my Mental Health Mondays podcast a wrestling podcast, but most of the people I know through like wrestling fandom. But
right.
Something I think you and I share, an opinion you and I share, it's funny how tribalism, and not just wrestling, but in just about anything, politics, sports teams, it can even be about pizza, whether or not pineapple should be on pizza. People get very tribal about that kind of stuff. And do you feel like most people maybe really don't care, and it's just the loud idiots that make the noise?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a part of it. And I think people are just bored sometimes. I think, they're sitting at home and they're bored and they're like, oh, who can I annoy today? And I think, the tribalism is weird. It's really weird in wrestling because you have people who are faithful to a certain promotion or a certain style of wrestling, and instead of just saying, okay, that other thing is not my thing, they'll go out of their way to trash it.
Yeah.
It's not all that dissimilar from sports. Like football fans are crazy. Like, I live in the Philly area, but I'm not a Philly fan.
Yeah.
So, Philly fans are notorious for being super intense to any other team and any other team's fans. So there's definitely, it's not a wrestling thing. Definitely. I think it's just a human thing.
Yeah.
I think people have a very hard time accepting the fact that somebody else thinks a different way or somebody doesn't like what they like. And I think sometimes people just need to take a step back and realize like it ain't all that important.
it isn't. I always liken it to, imagine going to Burger King and walking into Burger King and then shouting, McDonald's is so much better, you all are stupid, and then leave.
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
Why waste your time even doing that? I mean, it just seems really silly to me. And you see that in politics, you see that in sports. Yeah, it's almost like people want their team to win, whether they're right or not. It blows my mind that people would be mad that someone else likes something.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of thing, it's obviously it's not new. It reminds me of a quote. I don't know if you know the author, John Green, who wrote the book, The Fault in Our Stars, that was made into a movie. Mm-hmm. He had a quote years ago from his YouTube channel that was kind of just paraphrasing here because I don't remember it specifically. But he said, like, about people making fun of people who are nerds. It's like you're using nerd as an insult because that person likes something. Like, how does that make sense?
Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to make fun of someone or downgrade them or act like they're less than just because they have a different interest than you.
Yeah, it's like a strong desire to make themselves feel better. But I've noticed over the last maybe 10, 15 years that the term nerd and geek has lost its negativity. I mean, it's almost like, it's an embraced. I mean, when you have people like Bill Gates and people like, that are now running a lot of things, but also I as a former teacher, I used to tell my students that if someone called you a nerd or geek, that's a compliment, because
Right.
that's actually that shows that you embrace something, or that you're an expert in a certain fandom.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's important.
Yeah, and nerd culture, and nerd culture has taken over pop culture. Look at the Marvel movies,
Mm-hmm.
and figure collecting is
Oh,
the hot thing right now. And I was thinking about it the one day, and I just feel like this generation right now that has, it's probably 30s, early 40s, millennials, whatever.
yeah,
Like, I think millennials were one of the first generations who really grew up with licensed toys. Now there were,
yes,
Gen X, like Star Wars toys came out in the 70s, so Gen X
mm-hmm.
had a part in that as well. But for the most part, licensed toys didn't exist back then. So it wasn't really like toy collecting, or it was just a
Yeah,
foreign concept. So now with toy collecting, like, because people are nostalgic for the stuff they had when they were little kids, it's just out of control, and really, like, the nerd culture went total mainstream, that you can't even use that as an insult anymore to make fun of
right.
someone. It's just
It's like,
it's just the norm.
you nerd. Thank you. Yes.
Right, thanks.
I
Yeah.
I'm Gen X myself, and when I
Right.
grew up in the '80s as a little kid, and I could, I had the Star Wars, the GI Joes, mask, all this, but now
Yeah.
it's like, and it's almost like I have a second childhood, and my wife will tell you, figure collecting is, you know, oh, you got them new, hey, that
Yeah.
AW Unrivaled, did
Scratch
that
that
come out
figure
yet?
itch.
you know,
Yeah.
it's really tough. It's really bad. But what I've noticed is, and I think it started, if you remember the Todd McFarlane Spawn series figures, when they came out, they were like
Hmm.
they were like sculptures, and it was
Yeah.
like, whoa, it was like right out of the comic. It wasn't
Yeah.
like these cheap little things. And I feel like the quality of figures and toys and collectibles have improved so much. So it's like, just like the little kids who are growing up now and looking at this, the adults, we're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, look, I gotta get the. Did you see the new edition of the GI Joe classified series? It's reliving our
Yeah.
childhood, but it's almost like it's taking it to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, along with that and wrestling, like, people may not consider it a hobby, but it
Mm-hmm.
really is. Like, wrestling is my hobby. I spend most of my time outside of work watching wrestling or interacting with something regarding wrestling in some capacity. So that,
Yeah.
that is definitely my hobby. And going back to mental health, that helps mental health a lot, just having that interest, having that hobby, that passion,
Mm-hmm.
that you can spend your hours outside of whatever your job is to do, and that kind of helps your mind keep busy, and help, it has, having a passion really definitely helps your spirits.
I think you hit the nail on the head there too. Having an activity in a hobby like that, there's so many positives that come out of that. One is the distraction, or the downtime. I
Hmm.
can't tell you how many times during the pandemic Wednesday night Dynamite got us through. Because
Yes.
we're in the salt mines and everything's going crazy, but we knew Wednesday night we could just
Hmm.
make it to Wednesday night Dynamite, and we were home free. But
Yeah.
also the community, and you're part of the Nation's Corner. And for folks that aren't familiar, Nation's Corner represent what
Hmm.
and and it's, you build a community of people, of like-minded people of the same interests, and that
Yeah.
becomes a support network.
Absolutely. And they've become my best friends, like
Mm-hmm.
truly, seriously. I'll give you a kind of a little rundown of how our group came together.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was really towards the end, like the fall of 2019. There was some of us that were kind of interacting on Twitter, like during the hours that Busted Open was on.
Mm-hmm.
That, while Busted Open was on, we would discuss things on Twitter, comment on each other's posts, give our thoughts on the show. And at one point in the fall of 2019, there was a Discord server created for the Busted Open fan community to be able to discuss Busted Open, discuss wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So I joined the Discord community, didn't really know anybody except for a couple people that I had interacted with on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, when COVID first started and we weren't sure what was going to happen, there was a group of people in the Discord that had been planning on going to WrestleMania in Tampa. Busted Open was having a big party there. So there was a bunch of people like that were planning on, hey, let's meet up. We've talked to each other online for a while. Let's get together at the Busted Open party.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, when everything got canceled, everybody was like, what are we going to do? Like, we had planned this whole thing. A lot of people had prepaid most of their trip to WrestleMania in Tampa, and we were planning on meeting up. It was going to be great. And then I remember the first day of that first day in March 2020, when just everything shut down all at the same day, and Busted Open didn't have a show. Like, they were just told one day, don't go into the Sirius offices in New York City. And so we were all sitting, in Discord waiting for the show to start, going, wait, why isn't there a live show? What's happening? There's no show today. So we decided in Discord, they have an option for voice channels where you can kind of log in and voice chat.
Yeah.
So we said, hey, we don't have Busted Open today to kind of start our conversation about what happened in wrestling the night before. So let's go in this voice chat and just chat with each other. So a bunch of people did that. Cool. And since WrestleMania was canceled, Zoom had kind of just came out of nowhere at that point. So we were all like, hey, there's this thing called Zoom, which is kind of like Skype. So maybe if we're watching WrestleMania, we could just log on to the Zoom and be able to see each other and chat with each other watching along with WrestleMania. So that was the first time we really got on Zoom, was to watch WrestleMania. And that whole WrestleMania weekend was absolutely amazing. We got to virtually meet each other through Zoom. We got to actually see each other's faces for the first time, other than just pictures online. And that kind of really was the start of our bond. There was a core group of us that really bonded that weekend. And we started doing Zoom watch-alongs for Raw, for SmackDown, for Dynamite. And eventually we just started doing Zoom hangouts every night. And still, 3 years later, and we are still sitting with each other on Zoom every night. Cool. There's a group of us. We are the closest friends to each other. I am closer with the people in the Nation's Corner crew than I am with any friends here that I have at home.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
I mean, technology a lot of times gets a bad rap, and I mean, there's pitfalls with it, but the timing of Zoom and that kind of stuff hitting right when the pandemic hit, it's that opened. It was almost like necessity was the mother of invention. Zoom took off, and those kind of communities really took off, and I totally hear what you're saying. You can find, it opens up your friendship pool, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you may not, and one of the toughest things I've had experiences finding people locally that are into wrestling as much as I am, and yet online you find your people. It's it's suddenly you're like the little bee in the Blind Melon video. It's like the bee girl. You open line oh, Busted Open, yeah. It's really cool, and with all the pitfalls of technology, that finding your people, finding your tribe online is tremendous, and having that tribe is so important for mental health, and with having people to rely on, having people to be there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, during the pandemic, especially those early months in the pandemic, I wouldn't have made it through if it wasn't for this group that, that eventually we started calling ourselves the Nation's Corner Crew. I was actually working at CVS Pharmacy at the time. Great time to get into the healthcare field.
I was going to say.
Great. I had just started at CVS like in the fall before the pandemic hit. So, that was really stressful being in, an essential job, still having to go to work every day, but not being allowed to go anywhere else. So it's just kind of stuck in this apartment going to work only, at an extremely stressful, very sometimes demeaning job. So, this crew really helped me through those days. Like I worked through the day and said, I can't wait to get home and talk to my people and just hang out and watch wrestling. I wasn't allowed to go to, other people's houses to hang out. So sat here on my couch on the computer talking to my friends online. And that's what we did every single day to get through those times.
Such a great outlet, and I can imagine you probably had a lot of customers that were scared, angry, not sure, and they probably took a lot out on you. So I'm sure you were not feeling it when you were when you were there.
Yeah, it was rough. Thankfully, I got out of CVS this time last year. I've been at my new job for a year now, and I work at a pharmacy for a rehabilitation hospital. So it's a closed pharmacy, no retail aspect. So it's much, much, much less stressful in that sense. So that has really greatly helped me the last year getting out of such a stressful, demanding job. So just so mentally draining working at CVS is. If anyone knows anyone who's ever worked at CVS, you know how it can be. And it honestly only got worse during the pandemic. Like when I started there just before the pandemic hit, I was like, oh yeah, I think this is going to be a great job. This will be good. This will be nice. And then the pandemic just made it so much more with the vaccines and all that stuff. So wrestling was seriously my outlet. Like I schedule my whole life about what wrestling shows are on any given evening.
Yeah, I had to tell my coworkers, you don't call me Wednesday night. Don't text me. If you text me or call me on a Wednesday night, I'm not going to respond until Thursday morning. You forget about it. It's done. It was almost like a religious holiday every week. Like it was like my wrestling Shabbos or something. It's like don't, I'm not messing with anything. Not messing with my work. Just we're watching it, and we have a crew now that comes over and we watch together. My wife and my buddy, the Nacho Man Shane. That's what we call him. And it's our thing. And he comes over and he'll vent because he's a special education teacher, and he comes over and we spend the first 30 minutes him just unloading what happened during the week. But I think that's important. And I think sometimes like my parents' generation were taught to bottle things up, suck it up, especially men. But in general, like it was like bottle it up, just be tough. And I think a lot of that comes from like the Great Depression, what have you.
Right.
But like I feel like what happens when you bottle it up, and then eventually it's going to explode, and it causes more, not just mental stuff, but it affects the body too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I try not to bottle things up. I've learned over the years. I used to just, let things go, just don't say anything. You don't want to start shit. Just let it go. And then I learned over the years, it does bubble up. It really does. And I have had to learn how to cope with that better. I'm pretty open and honest about my mental health issues and the journey, whatever you want to call it, I've been on. And, after having a suicide attempt in 2015 after a terrible breakup, I really kind of like spent some time and kind of like tried to figure out like, okay, what is wrong with my brain? Like, obviously there's something, wrong with my brain. And so basically trying to figure out like how my brain works so I can kind of better deal with it.
Yeah.
So understanding my own brain. And that's been really helpful for me, understanding how I react to certain situations, understanding like how I can cope and like what my triggers might be. That's been really helpful, and kind of really reflecting on my whole life and realizing that I probably dealt with depression since I was a little kid and just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Thinking about times when I was a kid where like, I was probably really depressed and just didn't know it, and anxiety too. Like I realized I've been dealing with anxiety for my whole life and didn't realize that wasn't normal.
I think that's a lot more common too with a lot of folks that don't realize, it took me 20 some odd years just to realize that I was gaslighting myself with a lot of issues. Like not, and again, I went through the whole thing about blaming my parents for this and that. My folks my folks divorced when I was 11, and it was right at puberty. So I'm starting, I'm all this stuff going on. And I really resented them for a little while, but really I was gaslighting myself on a lot of things and not realizing, like anxiety's a thing. It's not just like, oh, you're just be better. That used to drive me nuts. The worst thing someone could tell somebody that's going through something is just get better, just be better.
Yeah.
What are you upset about? Like,
oh, cheer up, calm down.
Calm down.
If only depression could be cured by just saying, "Oh, cheer up." Oh, okay.
Just smile.
Right.
Now, granted, I'm not going to take away from like Willow Nightingale, smile anyways. I love her to pieces. Just watching her come to the ring makes me smile. But I think that's something very important. And it's interesting. You mentioned that your suicide attempt, and we can get to some real dark places if we do bottle stuff up. But what you said after that is so important too. That I want to say soul searching, but because that kind of oversimplifies it. But that self discovery, and embracing who you are as a human. And for crying out loud, if I want to just scream to everybody, you're human. Give yourself a break. Good Lord. I think we're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, we definitely are. And it took me a long time to kind of be able to recognize in myself, like, okay, this is how, I tend to behave in certain situations. And this is how I can possibly change that, or this is how I can deal with that better. Especially one of the biggest things in my life is, in relationships. Frankly, I've had terrible luck in relationships in the past. And, the last major relationship I was in before my current one led me to want to end myself. So it's, it was really bad. It was, and the bottling up kind of contributed to it, just kind of ignoring, just kind of saying like, oh, I'll get through this. So it's not that big of a deal until it is. And that's the thing. And, trying to just cutting out negative people in your life is a major thing too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to touch on toxic people, but I wanted to just point out too something to think about. And this is for anybody that obviously, if anybody's contemplating suicide, please reach out to somebody, professionals. We have some friends at BetterHelp.com, one of our not official sponsors yet. That's in the works, but BetterHelp.com, or anybody, reach out to somebody and let them know what's going on. But we can gaslight ourselves into that spot where we just don't want to go on anymore. But what's tremendous is you never know what's right around the corner, or perhaps the nation's corner could be right around the corner. Think about like what you have now with your community, online community, your friends with Nation's Corner. You wouldn't have you wouldn't have had that had you been successful. But now look at where you are. You seem like, just interacting with you right now, you come across very confident, like happy with yourself. And again, I think a lot of that comes from, you almost have to go through that darkness to start to really peel that onion of who am I really,
Right.
and
Right.
really find out and really fall in love with yourself. And you mentioned trouble with relationships. If my wife met me 10 years earlier, she would hate me.
Yeah.
And because I had some, and I don't say growing up to do, because I'm never growing up, but I had to go through some changes with myself and realize how much was stuff that my parents put in my head, how much was my own just biases, and how much of it was like, how much I even had more self-hate than I realized. And that voice in your head of, you can't do this, and when I stopped listening to those voices, things started happening, and I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had to go through a lot of kind of growing up as well, just in the way I reacted in relationships, the way I kind of treated myself in relationships, honestly. Just not putting up with certain behaviors, not putting up with being treated a certain way. And that has helped build my confidence over the years, definitely. Just saying, like, I don't deserve to be treated that way. I'm better than that.
Absolutely. You have value in yourself. You have a line where in the past you almost overlook big red flags,
right,
that are because you want the relationship. I was engaged to, in my early 20s. I was engaged, and I thought this was going to be the girl of my dreams. It's going to be this great. We're going to have 2.3 kids. I don't know how you have 0.3 of a kid, but that kind of, that was the path. And I was overlooking major red flags with her. For one, I was holding her to a mental, a unattainable standard in my mind. And I was also holding myself to, and that's what even was harder to realize. I was holding myself to that same unattainable standard. And there were some compatibility issues that were there, but I wanted the family, I wanted the whole thing so bad that I was almost angry at her for not being what I wanted, like what I was hoping we could be, instead of just letting her be her. Like, and that was like the biggest, and letting myself be me. And once you start letting people be who they are, not, I'm going to work with this, we're going to work on this, things get a lot easier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I'm sure you've seen Seth, my boyfriend on Twitter, Darth Moyer.
Yes.
We kind of got together because of our mutual love of like Star Wars and wrestling and certain different things like that. That's how we connected. And I've heard stories from so many men saying that their wives or girlfriends made them throw away all of their wrestling stuff or whatever. And that kills me. I could never imagine telling Seth to throw away all his Star Wars stuff. Never. We have it displayed in front of our TV right here in the living room. I could never do that to someone, and I would never expect someone to do that to me, to tell me to abandon my interests.
That is the road to the dark side. No, exactly that. Like my wife, I really hit the lottery with this goddess, but she'll tell you, but no, she's fantastic. And she hated wrestling. She thought the WWF at the time and WWE was a joke. It was a clown show. And meanwhile, I'm like Mr. WWE. And I had gotten out of watching WWE for a while. I was in, career, all that stuff. And then AEW brought me back. And I had invited some friends over to watch the Full Gear pay-per-view, that first pay-per-view.
Okay. Yeah.
And she got hooked. She would listen to me watch Dynamite. And the first thing that clicked with her was Chris Jericho. was his promos. And then she started
Yeah.
watching the Young Bucks and watching Private Party and the Lucha Brothers. And so then when we had the pay-per-view, she got more into it. Like, she got more into it than me. And now she's probably as big a Mark. And we, again, Mark being like nerd, you call me a Mark all day long because I embrace that. I am a Mark Mark. Call me that. But it's so cool having those similar interests and having all that. But I couldn't imagine her telling me to throw my wrestling stuff out. Like, there's a lot that I'm into that she had, like my video games. Like, I play Fallout, I play Minecraft, I play all these different things that she has no interest in.
Yeah.
But what's funny is she is like, we joke about this, like she's the sports fan my dad never had. My dad always tried to get me into football, baseball, this stuff, and I was just like, it's not wrestling, like that. But she's diehard Chicago Blackhawks, diehard Cubs, diehard. I don't know if it's transgressing any Eagle Nation or anything like that, but no, she's
I'm Steelers Nation.
Oh, Steelers. Well, I'll take Steelers over
and Penguins.
Eagles. I'll take Steelers and Penguins over Eagles and the was it the Flyers? Is it the Flyers?
Yeah. The Flyers. Yeah.
That's cool stuff there. But yeah, like me telling her to throw away her Blackhawks. First of all, she'd throw me in the dumpster before she threw Blackhawks stuff. Like, you have to have that mutual respect, and if you truly care about somebody, you care about what makes them happy. And a lot of times, and I almost feel like a lot of times people rush into seriousness with a relationship, and like there's that controlling thing. They want to control, they want to change, they want all this stuff when they don't really know who they are, and they're not like loving the person that they're with. They're loving the idea of what they could be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's definitely important in relationships. And I think that's really like, I kind of firmly believe that relationships work better if you find each other like in your late 20s to 30s, because at that point, like I really didn't have my personality solidified until my late 20s. I like, if it kind of just like you said with your wife, if Seth and I had met in my younger years, we probably wouldn't have worked because I was a totally different person.
Yeah.
Like I look at pictures of myself in like high school or even in my 20s, and I barely recognize that person. Like it's a weird thing because in my brain, I kind of compartmentalize it that doesn't even feel like it was me that went through those experiences back then. I'm a very different person, very different personality.
Lifetime ago. Yeah, it feels like a lifetime
it doesn't even feel like it was the same person, that wasn't even me. So, I think relationships do work better when you find each other, later on after you've already kind of figured out who you are as a person, what your beliefs are, what your life goals are, things like that. And, then that helps your own psyche as well, being with someone who is compatible, who's someone who is mature in that way, that it's just, it just works out better. I kind of, obviously it works for some people, but it always makes me weary when you hear about people who like get married right out of high school or, it's still a common thing where people have kids young, and it sounds so scary to me because like I couldn't imagine getting married and having children when I was 19 or 20 years old. I didn't even know who I was then.
I dodged a couple bullets that I had loaded myself to shoot, but like because it's like I remember my first big breakup killed me. Like I thought I was gonna die. I thought my heart was just gonna fall out of my ass. I thought that. Like it was one of those things, and here it is. It's like I'm a teenager in high school, and I thought that I'm dead. There's no
life's over.
Life is over, and to look back on that now, it's silly because we barely knew each other. We were just like like this, but it's like a lot of it is in your head, and but you're absolutely right. It's like you almost have to go through. You almost have to go through enough. You have to find yourself, almost love yourself before you can truly love somebody else.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a cliche, but it's so
Yeah.
true. So true.
I do think there are cases, and it's just like the same when you meet somebody, the Doogie Housers that know they want to be a doctor when they grow up, or
Mhm.
oh, I know I want to be a police officer, I want to be a firefighter, or that, and then they grow up and they that's their gig. You can tell sometimes there's couples that just click. They
Yeah.
like find each other early on. Like there's a couple in high school that we knew that they were always together, and it was one of those things where it like you could see it. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like there was some growing. They both had the click, but for the most part, I think in most cases, you wait till your late 20s, even your late 20s, because it's kind of like
Yeah.
in your early 20s, you're figuring stuff out. By 28, it's almost like I think I know everything, and then you got to let the world's got to curb stomp you a little bit before you
Mhm.
really are ready for that kind of
Yeah.
relationship. And sometimes you've got to learn how to deal with those toxic personalities and kind of come
Yes.
in full circle to like the internet and in general. A toxic person can really bring you down if you're not aware of the toxicity and the things that they're doing to bring you
Mhm.
down. Have you how have you overcome dealing with toxic people?
Um, over the years, I've realized that, someone's toxic like that, if they're always bringing negativity in your life, at some point it's going to hit the fan
Yeah.
and something's going to have to change. Um, I've dealt with toxic people online and in real life, toxic friendships that,
Mhm.
I realized that the friendship had to end because it just wasn't beneficial to either of us. um toxic people online, like I try to ignore people for the most part, um because I've been accused of being condescending. I'm not quite sure how,
Yeah.
but
Well, did
uh,
you have your cup of wine while you were talking? Like,
right.
oh, look at the peasants trying to tweak me.
Yeah.
Right?
um yeah, I try to ignore people, and like I don't have the energy for that, like especially with wrestling. Like wrestling is my getaway, wrestling is my, distraction, my entertainment at the end of the evening. I ain't spending my precious entertainment time arguing with someone on the internet.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
No.
Nobody got time
No.
for that. Not at
Really.
all.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for any community. And you almost find out like it's tough to see at first because like in a work environment, you have your colleagues. You sometimes will have that the one person that's just going around spreading negativity. Now there's a difference between someone venting to you about their
Mhm.
frustrations, but when you have that person that's just kind of like it's almost like they're getting their joy out of other people's misery because they're
Yeah.
miserable themselves. They want to bring other people
Yeah.
and it's amplified on the internet. It's amplified on
Yeah.
Twitter and the the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, and just like in Twitter in general. I feel like it's that case where the kid that didn't get the attention, they go for
Mhm.
the attention for bad reasons. And
Right.
I mean, like I'll tweet something about puppy dogs and nature. I'll say, "Oh, hey, what this was a great blah 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 blah," and I barely get any response. But if there's anything controversial or negative, that blows up because everybody's upset and kicking the
Oh
hornets
yeah.
and such. And
Oh
that
yeah.
that tends to be such a frustrating thing. Do you do you feel like it's do you feel like it's human nature to be more attracted to the controversy rather than good stuff, or is that just
um
something? I
I
don't know.
definitely think people get a certain sense of joy out of watching other people's problems.
Mhm.
Look at reality TV.
Oh yeah,
And, like even go back to the beginning of reality TV with the real world. Like
yeah.
we were all fascinated watching other people sit in a house and disagree with each other about stuff.
Damn it, Puck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's an entire entertainment industry built on creating drama.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, I really do feel like human nature is just fascinated by watching drama unfold. You know, it's kind of like, even anytime, you know, we see arguments between people online and we're just kind of reading through the comments, just
Yep.
reading the argument without even putting it's just entertaining to read through the argument.
Ooh, you got dumped ratio.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating, but I think, you know, there is a certain portion of kind of trolls out there who just get like a joy out of making fun of someone else.
Yeah,
And, you
like
know,
fake
that's what I
account.
don't like.
Yeah, fake account, bunch of numbers, just joined last
Right.
month. Yeah, it's 2
Right.
following, and
Yeah,
they're
if
somehow
you don't share your name and you don't share a picture of yourself, I don't want to hear you.
exactly. And they're going after Tony Khan too. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, you know, I'm all for trolling in a certain sense, because sometimes it's kind of, you know, kind of a laugh at yourself kind of troll, or, you know, everybody makes jokes about things.
Yeah.
But when you're making jokes at, you know, making fun or trying to tear down someone, that's usually where I cross the line. I try, especially like, you know, online with wrestling, I try to be, you know, on the positive side. I really try not to post anything negative or tearing down anybody else.
And you're
You
certainly
know,
not
even
condescending. You're not condescending. Not at
yeah,
all.
even like, you know, when things happen on wrestling shows that, you know, wasn't super entertaining to me, I don't immediately jump online and say bad things about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, you know, that was kind of a bummer show, but oh well.
I think this is something that, and I've noticed, because going back to the WWE versus AEW tribalism, there's a difference between being critical of something you love and like hating on it. Because there are
Yeah.
folks that they want to just hate on something. They're there to cause pain and misery, and they're sticking to a point, and a lot of times it's something they heard from somebody else, like you know, you've heard of the Cornette folks, and you know, I think I've not actually watched Cornette, but I feel like there's a group that listen to that dude, and they seek out just to be mean.
Yeah.
I don't know if the dude himself is that mean. I don't know. I haven't watched this thing, but it's almost like there's that. But to bring up like, hey, you know, the Ricky Starks versus Juice Robinson feud's not doing it for me, but I love this. You know,
Right.
that's different, and I think that's more, that should be appreciated more. But I think some people then immediately think you're slamming AEW. How dare you slam AEW? We got to win.
Right.
We gotta say nothing but positive about AEW and only negatives about WWE.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't buy into all that. I'm a fan of both companies. There was a while there, like when AEW first started and was really super hot. You know, I was kind of disenfranchised with WWE for a while. I had stopped watching Raw altogether and pretty much only watched SmackDown sometimes.
Raw's tough to watch for 3 hours. I gotta be honest.
It can be, yeah. And even now, like ever since Triple H took over, I have been watching Raw, but sometimes if I have to wake up early for work in the morning, I can't stay up till 11 o'clock. I usually go to bed at 10 or 10:30. And when I wake up, I'll, you know, be like, oh, what happened at the end of Raw? Anything I need to catch up on? But like, even when I wasn't really watching WWE too much, I would never go online and just, you know, tear it down and crap on the entire thing. My attitude was more like, I'm disappointed that what they're doing isn't entertaining for me.
Yeah.
Sure, it's entertaining for some people, and that's okay, but it's not for me right now, so I'm not going to watch it. And, you know, I've gone back and forth, like, you know, watching it sometimes and not watching it other times. Obviously right now they're really hot with WrestleMania this weekend, but you know, I've never subscribed to the thought that I can only like one show, and whichever show I like, the other show I have to not like. You know, I like both. I watch both. You know, both have good things. Both have some, you know, things that need to be improved, but I'm not going to go online and like make fun of other people for what they like if it's different than what I like.
Exactly. And I want to know your thoughts. Did you watch the AEW All Access show last night?
I watched most of it. I went to bed a little early, so I didn't see maybe the last 10-15 minutes of it, but I watched most of it.
So you got the gist. I mean, the first 10 minutes, to me, and this goes back to kind of a similar thing, is I'm a huge Thunder Rosa fan. I'm also a Britt Baker fan. That can exist. And I think a lot of folks, especially last night, it's like you see the Thunder Army versus the DMD degenerates, whatever they're called. I don't know what her fan base, but the teeth, whatever. But it's like I'm a fan of both of them, and I feel like that there's whatever's going. But I had to remind myself too that what this is a reality show itself, and with all reality shows, not to break anybody's hearts or anything, but not to shatter anybody's images, but reality shows are very scripted. And granted, there's nuggets of reality, and it deals with real issues. But Britt was playing up to the cameras, and just watching the previews of future episodes, we're gonna hear Thunder's side of that whole thing.
I hope so.
It does sound like we're good, because it looked like there was a whole section dedicated when Thunder was finding out about her back surgery and what's going on with that. And, and so I think we're going to hear. I think this was designed for hype. I mean, TK knows what he's doing. He's a master chef when it comes to cooking, and I think he knows that drama. I mean, it's being talked about. So well, that's creating that thing. So I think that's something that's important for people to remember, is that you don't have to, by liking the competition of something, doesn't mean you hate it. Like liking AEW doesn't mean you hate WWE. And and I think that's something that's hard for people to understand.
Yeah. With the Thunder and Britt thing from last night's show, I was on the fence if I was going to watch it or not, but I was like, I'll check it out, see,
at least it wasn't
what
Power
it's about. Better than Power Slap, not better than BattleBots.
There you go. Yeah, BattleBots. Bring BattleBots back.
But yeah, I enjoyed seeing the Adam Cole stuff and the Young Bucks stuff. I enjoyed, seeing those stories. I was not too thrilled with that segment, with basically just the ladies backstage talking crap on Thunder. To me, it almost felt like a hit piece, honestly. And, I too am a Brit fan. I've met her several times, got her autograph, took a picture. She was very nice when I met her. But it feels to me that there's a certain narrative trying to be painted that only benefits one party.
Yeah.
If there's drama, okay, but both parties should get something out of it if the drama is being hyped for some reason. And I kind of feel like with this, it's drama that's only benefiting one party, and I'm not quite cool with that.
Yeah. There's three sides to every story. There's one side, the other side, and then the truth is somewhere in the middle. Now that truth might be closer to one person's side than the other. Same thing with that whole, which we'll probably never hear about, the whole post all out craziness. Allegedly Kenny protected Larry grabbed Larry and protected him. But there's all this drama but then, like, I've noticed that kind of going back to like the clickbait and getting attention, like places like even What Culture is it like where they'll try to like get the clickbait. And it used to be like they were bagging on WWE was getting their clicks, and then now bagging on AEW is getting their clicks. But when you really go and you listen or read or whatever, there's not much there. But it's almost like trying to hype up the hate, if you will, and just to get that thing.
Yeah. And the perfect example of the clickbait is the episode with John Moxley on Renee's podcast just came out. I don't know if you listened to it yet.
Yes.
So it was an hour-long podcast, and him addressing the Punk situation and saying what he had to say was the first 30 seconds of it.
Yeah.
And that's all anybody talked about, the first 30 seconds of an hour-long podcast. The rest of the conversation was phenomenal.
Yes.
I enjoyed the conversation between the two of them, but the internet only focused on those 30 seconds where he was saying, oh, there's too much drama. There's people that want to start drama.
Yes.
And that's the only thing anybody
headline.
Used as the headline.
Yeah.
And
that got the clicks.
I was like, did you even listen to the episode? Because they had a wonderful conversation.
Put so many people over. In fact, like I'm coming around on Marina Shafir now because of that conversation. I felt like Marina Shafir's debut was kind of flat. What they should have done is kind of presented her like a female Hook. Like, just no talking, just have her, and then have her just come in and murk people and slowly get, but less suplex like Taz and more submission stuff.
Okay.
And then like build her up. And I think it'd be interesting to see if she joins Blackpool Combat Club. Like, that almost would be a good fit. I do think putting her with Nyla was a good move, because where I think Marina was struggling the most was on her promos. Yeah. And then, I mean, and we all remember the Blossom Hat promo where you don't know me, you know me. Bless her heart. Yeah. She tried. But putting her with Nyla is good, because Nyla's super strong on promos. And I love Nyla. She's one of those wrestlers that she's a heel, but we love her. I mean, she's so great on the and she is the Twitter champion when it comes to stuff. She has the belt hands down. But I think that people, and it's kind of like, not people already make up their mind before they listen to the radio or before they listen to the podcast or read the article. People go in already with their own mindset, and that itself is dangerous, because you're then only going to look for those things that validate your opinion.
Right, exactly. And people were, all over Twitter saying, oh, Mox shit on AEW. He didn't.
No, he put so much of AEW over.
Yeah, he said one thing about there's certain people that like to start drama, and that needs to stop. That's pretty much what he said.
Gee, that sounds like every workplace I've ever been in.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly.
Exactly. It's like, oh, really? There were a couple people that like to start drama. Gee, I don't know if that exists anywhere else.
Yeah, right.
And he's so funny too. Like, you could tell, like, I don't really want to be here, but all right, I guess I bleed a little too much. Renee's so funny, because she's, this is what she does for a living, is the podcast, the journalism stuff. And where Moxley's such a, like, he'll cut a killer promo, but like that interview, you could tell how uncomfortable he's just kind of, until he gets going. And that was funny too. Like, there was a moment where she was trying to wrap it up. He's like, "Oh, Randy, I'm just getting started." Like, you could have got another hour ranting and raving about wrestling. And I think that's
they have amazing chemistry speaking to each other. We know that he's not like, he doesn't do social media. He doesn't really like doing interviews. But I feel like, she brings that out in him. She gets him comfortable talking, because he's comfortable with her, obviously.
Yes.
But oh my God, such a good interview. They talk to each other so well.
Yep. And I like how he put over Hangman. He put over a lot of folks, and you could tell, like, that a lot of people have honed in on the fact that he didn't have a contract for a while, but he kind of was the go-to guy when the CM Punk stuff happened.
Yeah.
I remember, I mean, we're still waiting for him to take his vacation, because he was supposed to go on vacation, and then they dragged him back in, and he's just like, all right. And he just started, he was one of the ones who put the company on his shoulders, and he did that. But, and it kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with relationships, there's also that important thing of balance, where sometimes one partner's strengths help another person's weaknesses, and vice versa. And you can kind of see that with them.
Yeah.
Well, Debhausen. I have to say it. Every time I see you on Twitter, I always the Danhausen voice. Debhausen. Oh, yes, very nice, very evil, very, very not condescending. Yes, very nice.
You know, I put a Hausen on the end of my Twitter name. It was at some point in 2020. I wanted to, not use my last name on Twitter. So I decided to put Hausen on there, and it just stuck. It's like part of my identity now.
It is. And have you had any interactions with the Danhausen himself?
Yeah, I've met him a couple times. He's incredibly nice.
Oh, yes, very much. Now, for use of the Hausen part of your name, you must send Danhausen many bags of money. Yes, or tea.
Yeah, I feel like I do owe him for using his name.
So, what do you got going on for WrestleMania week and weekend? What do you got going on? What's the nation's
boy. Well, I'm staying home, not going anywhere. I do have my nephew's birthday party Saturday early in the afternoon.
Is your nephew into wrestling?
Not quite yet. He is 7. He's 7. He's not quite into wrestling yet, but I'm hoping to expose him soon, because we have a promotion, PPW, Pennsylvania Premier Wrestling.
Very nice.
They just recently moved their home venue to just down the road from here, and where my brother lives. It's literally like he could walk there and be there in 3 minutes.
Very cool.
So I'm hoping to be able to get my nephew to a show there soon, and kind of indoctrinate him into wrestling.
Very cool. You gotta teach him the scissor.
Yeah.
Scissor. Yeah. Scissor, Auntie Debhausen.
I'll have to convince my brother that that's okay.
Now, I'm curious. Are you really from the Pennsylvania area? Because you haven't used the word John at all in this chat.
No, that's a Pittsburgh thing. I'm not from. That's a Pittsburgh thing. But I'm on the eastern, like New Jersey is 15 minutes away from me.
Like Atlantic City or Cherry Hill or Philadelphia, kind of.
I'm Lehigh Valley, so Allentown area.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I my parents are originally from the Poconos, so that's why we're not Philly fans. It's a lot of Steelers fans up there. But yeah, I'm born and raised here. Never left my hometown, unfortunately.
I lived in Philly for 2 years off Bustleton Avenue, and it was a long time. And the first time I had a hoagie was in Philadelphia, and I fell in. And of course, then we moved to the South, and it's like I say, yeah, I want to get a hoagie, and everybody looks at me like, what?
Yeah, what?
And we go, oh, a sub. I'm like, hoagie.
Yeah,
that's what a hoagie is, but.
They don't know what Wawa is either. So.
Oh my goodness, Wawa! It's so funny too, because in the Sheets versus Bucky's debate, I was like, why is Wawa not in this conversation?
Right?
Wawa's tremendous. It's
yes.
Oh my goodness!
And they've only gotten better. Their menu has expanded a lot in the past year or so.
Yeah, when AW came to Virginia Beach, or they came to Norfolk recently. Our crew that went to the event, our goal was afterwards we were going to go to Denny's because they filmed Rampage and all this stuff afterwards. Mm-hmm. So it's like 2 a.m. We're like, we're going to Denny's. We're all like fired up. We're going to get waffles, pancakes. We're going to do all this stuff. And Denny's was closed.
Oh,
Denny's was closed. So we're freaking out. What are we going to do? Right across the street, Wawa, 24 hours. Boom. We went into Wawa, but it was a bunch of starving wrestling fans, and we blew the place up, and it was great. And we're like, oh, Wawa's our state.
Wawa's the best. I go there. I literally go to Wawa almost every day for my morning coffee, or a snack, or even dinner every day.
Yeah, Wawa. Debhausen's putting you over.
Yeah,
for the nation's corner there, Wawa. Get the nation's.
Sorry, to answer your earlier question about Mania weekend, I have to pick and choose what shows that I'm watching over the next couple days because there's so much happening.
Yep.
Bloodsport is coming up shortly. I know Impact and ROH both have weekly shows tonight, in addition to the Impact Multiverse pay-per-view tonight, and then the ROH pay-per-view tomorrow. And then the Busted Open stuff happening Saturday morning, and then Mania and Mania. So we're all booked up.
It's going to be a busy weekend, but a fun weekend.
Yes.
I think it's funny too now, because it's like a lot of people are saying that Tony Khan's biggest competition for Booker of the Year is Tony Khan Ring of Honor Booker. It's like it's like the evil, the other multiverse Tony Khan. Was it AEW Tony Khan has got the tucked in shirt, the clean shaven smile, and then the Ring of Honor Tony Khan is unshaven with leather jacket, kind of hunched over, kind of cool stuff. It's been an hour of awesome chatting with you. This is great. We could go another hour, just like Moxie, we're just starting. But I'd love to have you back on and talk more. Talk more mental health, and I'm sure wrestling will come up again. This is not a wrestling podcast. Just want to let everybody know. I could talk all day long. You've been so much fun to talk to. And tell us about your socials. Obviously, that's so debonair on Twitter and
Instagram. Same on Instagram.
What are the other socials here? I'll just put them all. I'll in the editing process, I'll put them all.
I mostly just use Twitter and Instagram primarily, but there's also the Nation's Corner socials, which is at Nation's Corner on Twitter and at The Nation's Corner on all the other stuff, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And our Discord is at discord.gg/Nation's Corner.
Join the Nation's Corner. You heard it right here. And there'll be great monies for everybody. Yes. Nation's Corner representative. Well, thank you so much, Debhausen. It's been great chatting with you. On behalf of Debhausen, everybody, thank you for tuning in and listening. This has been Mind Runner for Mental Health Mondays. Have a great week. And Debhausen, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Just enjoy wrestling.
There you go. Excellent. Have a great week. Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.